Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica DeSersa.
And this week, we have a special guest, Jake DeSersa of the Lousy Advice podcast. Welcome.
And Lousy Advice.
And Lousy Advice.
And Lightweight.
And Lightweight.
And is there anything else you want to plug, Jake? Tell us about yourself.
You know what? I will plug that the first episode of the relaunch of Dead of Night is coming out April 15th, which is a horror, cult, and exploitation podcast I do with my wife, Nicole.
Oh, shit. That's...
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
We're relaunching it in a new format, and it's finally going to be coming out next week.
Where
That's my other
are
plug.
we going to be able to listen to this?
Wherever you get your podcasts.
Wherever your podcasts are sold.
Yeah.
And
It's Crispy Jake.
It's Crispy Jake.
Yeah.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah.
My apologies.
That's my
Yeah.
podcast name.
That's the official, that's the radio DJ.
Yeah.
Crispy Jake in the AM on the ones and twos.
Is that also your Venmo?
Yeah, it's at
Change-
Crispy Jake.
Change it to Crispy
I
Jake.
should.
Do it.
I'm getting it right now.
Are you really? Oh my
Fucking
God,
on
yes.
it.
Okay. Well, this week on the NOTstalgia podcast, we're talking about Jake's favorite movie, The Thing. We're talking about The Thing That Came to Earth and The Thing.
The Thing from Another World.
The thing
Oh,
came
did I
from
say it?
The thing from another world.
I wrote it here too, and I'm just like riffing off of nonsense.
Excuse
You know what?
me.
No, we have to get it right. You're correct. I'm just like, hey, do you know this fact? That's not a fact because I'm
You don't
spreading
want-
misinformation.
You don't want film Twitter to pounce on you, dude.
Oh, if at any point Film Twitter gets a hold of this podcast, we'll have already been pounced. I've said so many untrue things based in pure emotion on this podcast. We've had people already yell at us
About,
on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah. About like one of our Tim Burton episodes. Very, very strong words there.
Yeah, we'll tell you about it later. They were really upset with us.
sure.
But I mean, I love it. Let's open
We
this
do
shit
love
up.
having constructive conversations about media when people disagree with us.
Oh,
we
yeah.
will say
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
Because even on my end too, as somebody who's a consumer, I'm not smart. Despite how I come across here, I am very, very not smart. So I will speak in pure conjecture. Like I will not check facts. I will just be like, yes. And then this movie came out in 1973. It was 1996. Sure.
What's everybody's? So I know with me, I didn't realize The Thing was a remake of a film from the 1950s. So that was pretty wild to me. I also had not seen The Thing, or I hadn't seen it and like remembered it. I think I watched it 15 years ago and I liked it, but this whole watching experience was totally new to me. So I'm very excited to have revisited this after so much time. So yeah, also the board game is great. What about you, Eric? What's your relationship?
Oh, I have literally no history with The Thing at all. I've literally never seen. I think what was that game where you put on the DVD and then you play like a board game and answer questions?
Seen it.
I got a question right on Seen It one time about The Thing based on it was a screenshot of like the open chest cavity on the table with like the teeth.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I think that's The Thing, and I got it right, and I was like, oh,
Hell yeah.
okay. But I had never seen it. I didn't even know it was a remake. I didn't know there was a remake of the remake. I know nothing
And a
about this.
prequel and another remake coming
And there's
out.
another one coming out.
Oh, amazing.
My goodness.
Oh, it's because of Among Us, huh?
No, it's because of the success of Blumhouse's Halloween reboot. So they're like, what other John Carpenter shit can we drag out?
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, maybe we should just do that and the other one too. Like
could.
round this out.
Jake, so behind you is an entire spread of all of your
of Thing stuff.
The Thing stuff.
Yeah.
Tell us about The Thing.
So the 1982 Thing is my favorite movie of all time. John Carpenter is my favorite director, and Kurt Russell is my favorite actor. So this, for me, is just an absolute home run all around. I remember watching it for the first time and just being like enamored with the way that Carpenter and Dean Cundey use the camera to build dread in the way that they do in this. And it's just ever since I just watch it a couple times a year, pretty much.
Wow.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I know that was something that I do want to talk about too. That's something I noticed in the John Carpenter movie was a lot of those like lingering scenes of reactions of stuff happening.
Yeah.
Like as a means to like build suspense and dread. Like, oh, you don't know what's happening. They don't know what's happening. Shit.
Like the fade to black with the dog, right? Like you see him and then just fade to black. And then you like even the ending is just like really ambiguous. And like there was all of these moments where it just kind of let the weight of what is happening just kind of like sit there. And I really liked that. That was completely different in the first one. The first one, my goodness.
The first one's a really boring play.
Yeah. I had never seen it. I had never seen it, so.
I was surprised. There's some about the first one that I'm really excited to talk about.
Same.
Just because it is gay. If I don't know. Well, I mean, we'll obviously get into it in a moment.
Yeah.
But
something I have to say too about the thing and why I came to love it is because I love an underdog, and the movie when it came out was a failure in all senses of the word. Critical failure, box office failure. I think Roger Ebert gave it like a 2-star review and was like, "This is like so much worse than the original one." The director of the original one talked shit on it. The actress from the original one talked shit on it. Like everybody, like it was just drugged through the mud. But it, over the years, it found its audience and is now. If you look up the top horror films of all time, this movie is generally on there because it's found its audience and people have finally started to understand it and what it's doing and what it's about.
Rightfully so, too.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's a lot of films that we review on this pod that, like 2001 was a bomb. Willy Wonka was a bomb. Like, and then over the years, it found its audience. And, since then kind of was appreciated for what it was and what it was doing and what it was saying. And yeah, I think that it's always surprising to me, this person that goes to all of the comic conventions and like, kind of like exists in this space where I just consume way too much media, right? That like anybody for anybody to ever not like works like The Thing is just completely wild to me.
Yeah, I mean, Jake, honestly, you're one of the only people I know who talks about it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as like a dig. I just mean that in the sense of I'm so far removed from The Thing as like an idea, as a thing in general. I'm so far removed from it. But I mean, what a treat. Honestly, I was really excited to watch it and I'm happy I did.
Shall we get into it?
Yeah, let's do it. Here.
Let's do it.
Cool. In Anchorage, Alaska, sometime in the mid-1900s, an Air Force crew led by Captain Patrick Hendry received orders to fly to a desolate research outpost at the North Pole, where a group of scientists have requested their support. On their trip, the group is joined by Ned Scott, a journalist desperate for a good story, when they hear a radio transmission detailing an unusual aircraft crash nearby. After they arrive, Henry immediately makes his way to see his old flame, Nikki Nicholson, the secretary of the leading scientist, and uncomfortably questions her about their previous romance. Soon thereafter, the scientists and the Air Force men head out to the previously mentioned crash site where they find a UFO and promptly, without hesitation, blow it up. Surely nothing could have survived that, right?
Wrong! We're just getting started. The scientists find a body encased in ice using a Geiger counter and decide to take the whole chunk of ice back to their encampment. After a big oopsie-daisy on one of the soldiers' part, the ice is melted and the alien is freed. The alien starts wreaking havoc on the camp, losing an arm in the process, which is studied by the scientists. As it turns out, the alien is a vampire/super vegetable that must be stopped. After lots of plot twists and arguing between the military and scientists, the creature is finally destroyed by the military and the journalist gets the big old green light to tell his story to the world. The end.
Woo! The Thing from Another World. That's the theme song.
Keep watching the skies.
Keep watching the skies. Eyes on the skies. Eyes on the prize? No. The skies.
This movie was
boring.
A movie. Yeah.
Okay. First and foremost, above all else, this movie was so boring.
Yeah.
I don't love, but some of those like classic monster movies are kind of cool and like at least pseudo semi interesting. But even the moments where like the Thing did show up, it was just fucking Frankenstein with no makeup and gills on his arms. And you're like, wait, what? This is silly. And then all the dialogue was just like that. I wrote the
it was infuriating.
The opening scene. I was just like, this is like literally one of the most boring conversations. Like, well, what do you say about bikinis? Well, I'm playing poker. And then the guy showed up and he said, you should talk to the lady. The lady's here? No, it's the captain. You're like, wait, what?
There was too much dialogue. I couldn't tell what was happening. I was just like, wait a second. I had to like rewind a minute or two because like I feel like there's a lot of old movies that do this where they just throw in a lot of dialogue that really has nothing to do with the story or character development or anything in place of something actually happening in the scene or something interesting. And it was really infuriating to me because most of that throwaway dialogue was about like objectifying women.
Oh yeah.
Like all of those lines are about, like you said, like, there's bikini babes in Accra and they wear nothing but bikinis and dote on you. Or, well, the girls in Seattle don't have fur pants. Ha ha ha. And then like when they talk about the when we first are introduced to the idea of Nikki existing in the world, they call her a pinup girl at the North Pole. And like they're trying to be like, oh, you got the details, Captain? Like, I want that. And then like at one point they like relate aliens to women, you know, like they have the same reaction to the war effort boys. And I was like, I can't, like, this is just so frustrating. And especially because like Nikki herself is like just basically an objectified barista where she just like half of her lines in the movie are asking if people want coffee. And she also is the one that saves the day by literally stating the obvious, like, oh, fire, right? Oh, do this. And like it was just really frustrating. And especially because like her relationship with the captain is like just incredibly gross. Like he literally comes into her room and is being just really overbearing and literally backing her into a corner with all of these questions. And that's supposed to be flirting. Like, I have a lot of things to say about them and that dynamic.
I will say there was a level of her that I liked, that she was like, I mean, obviously that guy's character was shitty and he was just being like a dumb guy. But momentarily it was like she was like constantly belittling him and his fragile ego at all times. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting take for this. Obviously, it's not like the character's not written as autonomously as a character should be written. Yeah. But even in the dialogue, there were moments that I was like, oh, okay. Like, she's making fun of him. I like this.
There were. And I did like those moments. But every one of those moments was always like, for instance, let's go to the scene where his hands are tied behind his back while she gives him shots, weird. Right? Like, let's talk about objectification and, like, you know, fantasy women, right? That's what she's there for, right? The way that she talks to him, even when she's belittling him, is still kind of like that fantasy dynamic, right? Where it's like, oh, she's in power. But she's never actually really in power in the conversation, in what's happening in the scene. Even in that scene where he's tied up, he's not actually tied up. He got out of that a long time ago, and he's just playing along, you know? Yeah. So, like, even though it seems like she has the upper hand, she really never does. And she also constantly rewards him. She's like, I like how you handled that. You're nicer when you're not mad. I'll buy you drinks. You earned it. And I'm like,
and he's like, oh my God. He's the most fragile baby of any, like, so worried. She leaves him the note and he's like, what if they saw it? She's like, shut the fuck up. Who cares? And he's like, no, but they could have made fun of me. And she's like, and okay, great. Like, should I care about this? No, you should leave now. And he's like, fine. She's like, but you're hot. And he's like, what? And she's like, get out of my room. And you're like, what is happening?
Yeah. See, if she would have like stayed to that and not like like towards the end been like being there as kind of a prize for him. Yeah. I loved when she was like, he's like, look, I liked you. That's my excuse. I started all wrong. And she's like, oh, okay, well, how would you have started? And he's like, well, that's a whole story. And she's like, oh, a whole story? I don't have time for this shit. And she just leaves. And I was like, cool, I like this. But then, like, that strong moment was just every other scene after that was just kind of like demoting her as a character. And it was cool that there was a woman in this. But, you know, the next one has no fucking women. Yeah. But
actually, we'll talk about it. But there's actually, I'm going to argue there's maybe 2 women in the next one. But
oh, okay. No, I'm excited to talk about it. Oh, the computer.
That's at least one of them.
I do have like a little section on quote unquote women, because I think the next one is hella gay.
Oh,
hella
it
gay.
really is. Yeah.
Hella queer.
I mean, yes. But I feel like, okay, so if we're jumping into that, I feel like this one is way more overt. The other one was more subtextual. This one was more like, oh, he's straight up looking at his wiener. Like, they're locking eyes. He's licking his lips. Like, they are gonna fuck very soon. Like, that's all I could see. It was, what was the scene? I wrote it. He's like, McHenry, like, asked that one guy. He's like, Captain, can I borrow you for a minute? He's like, oh, yeah. They're hush talking. And the guy who's, like, telling him whatever he's telling him keeps staring at his lips. He will not look away from this other guy's lips. And I was like, okay, stop. And then the captain asks him, are you getting nervous? And then the guy like giggles and like crosses his arms. And I'm like, this is all flirty body behavior. Like, what are they doing? And then he mentions that he got the lieutenant an electric blanket. And then the guy clears his throat. And that's when he does the full look down and back up of him. Like the full, like, they're fucking. They're all of these guys. And this also leads to like the idea of their overt sort of like objectification of women and how performative it is, right? Amongst each other. There's like this level of like, well, she's got big boobs and I like boobs and fucking women in bikinis. Yeah, bikinis are so hot. Like that, which is pretty much all of the conversations that they're having.
Yeah.
To me, I'm like, this is
while they talk over each other.
Yes, they're talking over each other constantly. It's like this super overt heterosexual performance. And then when they're in like quiet, confined spaces, they're less performative and more comfortable with each other in this way that feels very homoerotic. At least. I mean, that's what it felt like to me, and I was just waiting for it. Obviously, I was like kind of hoping, not hoping, that there would be an intentional plot device where it like they're gay, that's why they were the subjects of the story or something. But I mean, it's the 50s. I doubt that that's going to happen.
I mean, that's why they had to put a woman there, right?
Yeah.
Probably, it's probably a case of the not gays.
Yeah.
They're not gays, yeah.
Yeah.
Not gay, yeah.
I mean, that would also make sense as to, like, why the captain is so doting on all of those men, right? Because, like, they do start off talking about women and women. Oh, yeah, give me the details on this women. And, like, I was really surprised by some of the captain's behavior when his men felt like they could go to him and say like, hey, I'm actually really scared. Like, you know, also the other guy is really scared. What can we do? Can we cut our shift shorter? Can we do something? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Right. And then even with the journalist, like, I mean, what fucking captain is going to say like, oh yeah, with my precious fucking airtime that I could barely get a hold of like my general or whatever, I'm going to ask if this journalist can post this story, right? So he's like also kind of like doting on him a little bit. And then even when he's like the first one, when they realize, you know, kind of what's happening and everything, he's the first one with the gun and he's the first one that rolls out to go get this alien, right? He's like, no, I'm protecting my people. Whereas like a lot of other captains or people would just be like, oh yeah, you go do this and you do this, or you like, there's a level of protection that kind of that feeds into what you're saying. And I love that.
It really does. And that's not to say that like, because obviously like, I like this idea from a non-sexual perspective of just like a sort of non-chauvinistic, non-sexist male camaraderie that is platonic, like where men can be a little bit like more flirtatious with each other and fun and more open and like even cuddly or like intimate with one another. That doesn't have to necessarily be sexual. I like that as a read as well, but I'm saying that they're fucking on the record. I want that version of this.
You got your flag planted in that in the fucking category.
100%. They must like, and that's it. You're totally right. He's like protecting his boys, and I'm like, ooh, what is this poly relationship
like, they
going
met
on
in
here?
Accra? Ooh, that's cute.
Yeah. I was like, okay, who are the primary? Who are the tertiary? We need to talk about this.
Yeah. Which is in such that attitude is in such direct contrast to the other version.
Oh yeah,
where everybody's like fuck everybody else, like to a certain extent, as opposed to in this one where they all kind of the servicemen band together, you know, the U.S. military bands together to, you know, fight the other.
Yeah, it's interesting because like in the other one where everybody is kind of out for themselves, right? This one you see everybody kind of separate based on their whole belief system, which is very basic in this film. It's, we have three groups. We have the military who wants to weaponize everything. We have the scientists who just want knowledge. And we have the journalist who represents like the public, right? Just wanting transparency and wanting to know what's happening.
Yeah.
So like seeing them kind of like section off and kind of like, cover for each other, even if they don't necessarily believe what they're doing is right, even if they're questioning things, like seeing like these smaller communities kind of build up around this absolutely terrifying event. Right? Like,
yeah.
And then also like seeing who decides to cross lines to actually solve the situation, because that's the only way that anything does happen is through like a sharing of knowledge.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool,
I completely agree. I mean, one of the things that I thought, and I feel like I want to bring this up when we talk about the next one, because I mean, not to be like this, but I have very little to say about this movie.
Me too.
Only because it is so like
it's cookie cutter.
It's cookie cutter, and I mean this
especially.
I mean this in the worst way possible. It's simple.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly simple story with not much going on.
That's so fucking funny because
it barely cuts through anything to get anywhere, and by the end, it's like we must tell the world, like whatever, and then you're just like, oh, okay.
I feel
aliens.
I feel like this movie is like the textbook example of here are all the tropes, plot-wise, character-wise, all of this, like here is a basic script. Now make with it what you will, which John Carpenter absolutely did, right?
Oh, and that's one of those things that like I've never seen that one, but one of the things that I do want to bring up is sort of the inclusion of some of the visuals from this one in John Carpenter's.
Yes.
Right? Like the found footage of them like in the circle, like that was an obvious like reference to the first one. I'm like, that like totally adds some flavor to this one, like giving it the substance of like a way more interesting story. If that's a found footage thing and not 25 minutes of them getting in a circle trying to blow something up, I'm like, gorgeous. Great idea. Perfect implementation. I'm super here for it. But I mean, here we are in this first one with them being like, you go over there and now plant this and get in a circle. Is this a UFO? Maybe. I can see it. Grab. Like 35 minutes later, like, y'all get back to the house. What are you doing?
I remember looking at, because at the runtime of the movie and being like, this only has 10 minutes left?
I know.
Yeah.
Nothing's happened.
But like nothing happened in the first like 35 minutes of this movie. I was just like, okay.
And the one highlight for me was that crazy wild ass fire stunt scene where there's a man on fire just throwing shit around a room, and I'm like, this is dangerous. Like somebody's gonna get hurt.
That was old enough for a fire stunt like that to not be properly supervised
at
all.
Like all those horror stories you hear about old Hollywood and how like stunts and all that stuff went down.
Well,
yeah, 100%.
I think Ergos is telling me a story about like when they would have guns and like bullets in these movies, it was live ammunition, and it would be a sharpshooter shooting around an actor. Like, what the fucking fuck?
No. Oh my god!
Before squibs, before like these like smaller explosives, it was a sharpshooter on a fucking loft aiming around the actor and attempting not to shoot the actor with live ammunition, which is like, oh. Yeah, cool. Definitely fun for everybody. Like, Jesus.
I did want to talk about the alien just a little bit. The vampire super carrot, which I thought was hilarious that they kept calling it the carrot. I have two things to say about it, and they're not necessarily connected. I mean, of course, one, we know that violence was used immediately upon discovering this, right? So, of course, it's going to be violent, all of those things. That's not what I was going to say. What I was going to say is there's a line later on to kind of further paint women as the... God, what's the word for it? Like, there's this line where they talk about the scientist. What's the main scientist's name? And it is
Carrington.
Harrington, thank you.
Yes.
He says that their development was not hindered by emotions or sexual attraction, kind of insinuating like while all of these men, throughout this whole film are talking about women and women's bodies more specifically in these moments where they don't necessarily have anything to do with what's happening in the scene, like calling them a distraction. I thought that just like, for me, really drove home what this film thinks about women, because I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. So women hold men back and hold back like our entire species. Fucking cool, right?
but women are also not people with that kind of capability. So they
same time,
they both do and also can't. But also, by definition within this story, women are from Venus. They are actual aliens, and they are not people.
Yeah.
I mean, just it ran the gamut of all of the wonderful misogynistic tropes of any sort of whatever. I mean, granted, did I expect any better from something like this? I don't think so. I mean, at least with a character like Nikki Nicholson, I was hoping, at least based on that first interaction with her, that there would be a more progressive for the time sort of approach to writing her. But I mean, alas, there really wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't pre-coded Hollywood, so
Yes.
Yeah, right.
The other thing that I was going to say about the alien in that last scene where they electrocute the fuck out of him.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, like, maybe it's because, like, there's such a big conversation about, like, the death penalty and stuff happening right now, but I was like, ooh, is this kind of, like, a metaphor, or is this kind of, like, talking about incarceration and electrocution and all of this? But then I'm like, wait, if it says that, is it, like, pro that? Like, I don't know.
What is it
because
trying to say about it?
Yeah, it was really uncomfortable, like, just, like, that whole scene.
I feel like oftentimes, especially in a lot of, like, well, not necessarily horror, but, like, in general, I mean, these are written by people with biases, so I think there might be a level of, like, xenophobic rhetoric going on here as far as, like, immigration and scary others and what have you that, like, could be at play here. Possibly, like, I'm assuming it is,
for sure.
right?
Right, yeah.
Because it's literally the thing from another place, and you're like, oh,
yeah, totally.
great. I mean, granted, there's not much textually that, like, there's not a lot here, but, like, you can speculate as much as you want, just generally. I would assume that is the case. So when it comes to something like this, especially within the 50s, like, okay, what is the cause of death? How are we going to kill the monster? Oh, yeah, the electric chair. Great. Cool.
Let's see. There was some casual racism in this one.
Oh my God!
Looks like lynching.
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, "What's?"
Jesus.
Although
what did you say?
There's a lynch line in the other one too that I only just noticed on this watch. That I was like, "This is kind of weird."
Yeah.
Oh, that they really? I didn't notice it in the second one, because in this one it was just like, "Hey, what's up?" Looks like a lynching party when they're like all together. I'm like,
it's like almost the same line.
Yikes! Really?
Yeah. It's when McCready comes in and he goes like, "You look like you're getting ready to start a lynching party," when he has the, like, dynamite. And
no
shit!
When
he comes back in, yeah. He says it then. Yeah.
Well, and then, like, there's that small line about using the indigenous peoples to do things for them as like free labor, right? And I was like, oh, okay. Like,
calling back to your Willy Wonka episode.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. I do love how this film painted the military to just look over bureaucratic and just look so silly, because, like, I mean, the whole time they're just using others when they're convenient, and, like, even though they want to control the narrative, like, they have so many standard operating procedures that they're like, they only read them after they act about it, like they blow it up and they're like, oh, well, whoops, maybe we fucked up. And then the general is like, oh yeah, blow it up. Right. And I was like, cool, awesome. And, like, how everything just, like, requires permission and control and this. And I was like, oh, cute. I like that. I like that they don't look smart.
You're not supposed to touch them. I'm the captain. I think we should fight it. And then it's like, actually, your boss just said that you shouldn't hurt it. And then the scientist is like, aha. And you're like, oh, okay. He's like, see, your boss, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay.
That scientist was just so cartoony. He was such a cartoon bad guy. Like, I wanted him to twirl his mustache and just be like, see?
Yeah. All the way down to the mustache.
Science is evil.
Science is evil. That's what we know.
That's what we learned.
Join the Navy, and science is bad.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wait, are they the Navy?
It was the Air Force.
Air Force.
Yeah.
My gosh.
It's so interesting that it took place at the North Pole. I don't know what the purpose of that was.
Yeah,
because the short story and the 82 are set in Antarctica. The short story they're both based on, and it's like really strange.
Do you think it's just a Christmas thing?
Maybe Howard Hawks is really into Christmas.
Maybe when they were writing it, it was just they had Christmas on the brain.
Yeah.
Like, what if it was the story of Santa, but scary and aliens?
Yeah, with the thing
with
is
no
Santa.
The thing is Santa. Yeah, exactly.
I'm always super surprised at some of the little things that people decide to change when retelling a story, like something as like inconsequential as rather than being Antarctica, it is specifically the North Pole. Like, why?
It's insane because I finally read the short story for this. I'd never read it before, and it's insane how unlike the short story this version is for being the very first one. It's like not like it at all. The only thing that it has in common is that it's cold and they dig an alien out of the ice.
Oh,
That's
shit.
it. That's
No
literally
shit.
it. Yeah.
Is it much closer to the Carpenter version?
Yeah. The main character
Really?
is McCready. He's the second in command. Everybody has the same character names. It takes place in Antarctica. The thing shapeshifts. It's like Blair escapes out of a shed and starts to build a spaceship in that one too. Like it's like so much more spot on.
Oh wow. Okay.
In this one.
I wouldn't have expected that at all.
Me neither. Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is just John Carpenter and his genius. This is it. You know. When was the book written?
It was in 1938 is when it was first published. They actually recently unearthed, because it's a short story novella. Mm-hmm. They actually unearthed the full-length novel in his belongings, and they released it called Frozen Hell. So I haven't read that, obviously. But they have a full novel version of it that is basically an expanded version. That is apparently the one that Blumhouse is doing, is they're adapting that full book as opposed to just a short story.
Ooh, that's kind of
fucking
cool.
wild.
It's cool.
That's actually really exciting.
Yeah.
Maybe we should review the next two.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, seeing the trailer for the next one. I know, Jake, you said you didn't really care about it that much. It's fine.
Yeah.
But seeing Mary Elizabeth Winstead being in it, I was like, oh,
because it's pretty much
I want to watch this.
It's pretty much what happens in the Norwegian camp is that movie.
No shit.
And it
Really?
ends with them. It ends with them chasing the dog in the helicopter. That's how the movie ends.
Okay, I'm obsessed.
Oh, that's pretty tight.
Yeah.
That's actually really sick.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think we could do a part 2 to this episode and come back when that movie's made and do a thing 2011 thing
2022 or whatever.
2022 2023. Yeah. I'm down.
There's a couple things I wanted to get into on this one too that I thought was interesting when I was looking at behind the scenes stuff. So the director of it, Christian Nibby, there's contention whether or not he actually directed it.
Oh.
And they actually think that Howard Hawks, the producer, he was like a famous Golden Age of Hollywood director. He did like Rio Bravo and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, like all that kind of stuff. He was like a famous Western director. So many members of the cast is being like, oh yeah, he directed everything except for one scene in the movie. But that he just wanted to get his friend a Directors Guild card, so he put him as the director on the movie.
No shit.
And apparently, according to this right here, so RKO Pictures would pay their directors a $50,000 director's fee. And he gave Christian Nibby $5,460 of it, and he kept the rest for himself.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty tight.
Honestly, though, like, if I was in that situation, I was trying to get my friend to be like, hey, just come in and direct a scene. Like, it's not a big deal. It could be inconsequential. Just do it, and then I'm
put you as the director. Yeah.
Yeah. To get your card. Hey, why not?
And what's even more interesting is because I was always making these weird connections in my head. So the weekend that The Thing 1982 came out, it was up against Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan.
Oh.
And Poltergeist, which
what?
If you're not in on Poltergeist, there are people that think that Steven Spielberg directed that movie and not Tobe Hooper. So like this many years later, you have another thing where people are contentious about who actually directed the movie.
Yeah.
On the same day.
That's
how
wild.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love that. Parallels.
Yeah.
Connections everywhere.
What a fucking week at the box office. Jeez.
The week before, and they attribute this to The Thing's failure, the week before, I believe, was E.T. Extraterrestrial.
Shut up.
Oh, that's all fucked. Yeah, no wonder.
And then 2 weeks after, Blade Runner.
No!
What a time for movies. Holy shit.
It was a wild 1982 is a wild year for movies.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I could also see like the family-friendly alien movie versus the not family-friendly alien movie, that kind of being its sort of downfall, especially if E.T. is sort of the reigning champion as far as pop culture is concerned.
Sometimes I'm just like puzzled as to why certain movies bomb, and then I'm like, giving like all of that context for this, Jake, is just like, like, I mean, that makes sense. Clearly it's not because this isn't a good movie or anything, and maybe, you know, audiences weren't just ready for it or anything, but I'm just like, holy shit, like, that's wild to me.
Before we do move to the next one, I want to read a quote from the guy who played Captain Hendry about the next one to bridge this gap. If we're done talking about Thing from Another World.
I'm cool with that, yeah.
He said, the effects were so explicit that they actually destroyed how you were supposed to feel about the characters. They almost became a movie in themselves and were a little too horrifying and took away from the development of strong characters.
I'm sorry, what development was there for his character in The Thing from Another World? Like,
also, I like that this sounds like one of those things. It's like they were impressed by it. They're like, honestly, at the end of the day, for the story, it's kind of just too good, and that's why it's bad. Like, they actually did too much, and I think that the story could like lend itself more artistically to like less if they just done less. Like, that would be cool.
Should we do the other one?
Yeah, I'm honestly, I have literally, I took so few notes for this first one.
Yeah, I was the same way.
It was kind of a snoozer, and by the end of it, I was like, oh, great, it's over.
Well, you know what?
It was just too on the nose. Like, everything was just like, everything you expected to happen happened the exact way you expected it to happen, and like was paced the exact way you expected it. It was like a D-list movie. I understand why nobody talks about this, why I didn't realize that there was an original version of The Thing.
Also, the Warner Archive Blu-ray, if you're a Blu-ray buyer, the scan on it was fucking terrible. Like, the elements they had to work with were apparently not good because it looked like shit.
So you sent it back, right?
Yeah, I returned it.
So, Jess, you know Jake's Blu-ray collection?
Yes.
And how monumental it is.
Incredible. Yes.
The fact that you had to send a Blu-ray back.
Yeah, I was like, I really don't want to.
So telling.
I kept Robo War, which is an Italian Predator knockoff, made for about $5.
Fuck yes.
Incredible. Obsessed.
I did that. I kept that, but I was like, Thing from Another World has no place in my house.
we do not stand this film.
Even with all of the Thing memorabilia in your background right now, like, no, this does not meet my standards. Not even as a piece. In Antarctica, sometime in the 1980s, a U.S. research station suddenly becomes a battleground when a Norwegian helicopter flies through their camp while attempting to chase and kill a dog. The Norwegians perish with their goal unaccomplished, leaving the Americans with lots of questions. Soon thereafter, helicopter pilot McCready and scientist Dr. Cooper head to the Norwegian camp looking for answers, only to find it in ruins. After Dr. Blair analyzes their research back at the U.S. station, he realizes an ancient alien is to blame for the carnage, and that it can become a perfect replica of any organic life, even humans. Surely nothing can go wrong, right?
Wrong. We're just getting started. Paranoia quickly takes hold of the men at the research station as they realize any one of them could have been replaced by an alien replica. Unfortunately, this realization comes too late, as the alien, who as it turns out was actually the dog the Norwegians were trying to kill, has already begun replacing the crew members with aliens. McCready devises a way to tell who's been replaced with a blood test, which inadvertently leads to the death of most of the crew as paranoia continues to mount. With nothing left to lose, those remaining few decide to blow up the base, exposing Dr. Blair as the big bad Papa alien and accept their grim fate. The end. Or was it?
Or was it?
I don't know.
Oh my God. Love this ambiguous ending.
Yeah.
So that dog should win a fucking Oscar. That dog.
Yeah. That's a pretty famous dog, too, as far as I know.
Really?
Yeah.
Were they in Snow Dogs?
No.
Were they Balto?
Oh, well then, not that famous now, are they? Honestly, like, well, initially I hated the fact that they were chasing the dog. I was just like mad about it.
I'm curious what your thoughts were.
About them chasing the dog?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think one of the only things that I did know about this is that it was the dog.
Yeah.
So as soon as like the dog was running, I was like, "Yeah, the dog's here!" And then they're shooting at it. I was like, "Oh yeah, that's the alien. That's why they're shooting." It's like this whole thing, and then that's why it's supposed to be confusing.
I forgot about that. So I was like, "Oh, cute! It's what the fuck are they doing?
Like, why are they doing this? Oh my god!" But that dog, like every time they cut to the dog's like looking out the window, just staring at them, and I'm like, "This is fucking terrifying." This dog is so good at their job. Like, I'm obsessed. Give this dog a fucking award.
It's interesting because if you were Norwegian and saw this movie, anything was like spoiled for you at the beginning because the Norwegian guy says, I think, it's the dog, the alien is in the dog. And so if you're Norwegian, you're like, oh, thanks, I guess. Like,
yeah. Like, appreciate it. Thanks for the whole twist.
Thanks for ruining it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
But I'm surprised, though, because they really got through the dog stuff, like, in the first 30 minutes. They got through so much off the top. Like, it just kind of jumps in and starts, and it's like, oh, yeah, they're here. Fuck, they killed the Norwegians. Now they're at the base. Now it's this, and it's the dog, and the dog's eating the other dogs, and it's like, holy shit. And we're at, like, minute 35.
Yeah.
And even though, like, it goes that quick, kind of like you're saying, it still felt like it took so much time to get there because of the way that it was shot. I know we already kind of like talked about it, but like the moments where it just kind of like hangs on, like it's the point of view of the dog, and then like the camera is at the dog's level when it's like seeing around, and then it fades to black, right? Just like, ooh, this is great. I love this.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one was just like, hey, what's going on? Hey, this, hey, super vegetable carrot. And you're like,
yeah,
I don't understand. I don't understand what's happening. This one, like, it felt like there was a mystery because, again, if you hadn't seen it previously and didn't speak Norwegian, like, you start off with them trying to shoot a dog, and, like, again, I forgot about that. So I was just like, what do you, like, and then,
how
of
dare
course,
you?
I was like, oh, that's right. It's the dog. That makes sense because I know what is going to happen in here. But like just seeing that was just so incredibly jarring, and I kind of love that that's how audiences are brought in initially, is by being made uncomfortable, and then like just so like, okay, we're gonna go to the Norwegian camp, and there's nothing there. It's in ruins, and they kind of have to like piece things together. And that's where, like you were saying, Eric, they took some of that like found footage from the first film, which I thought was like a really cool nod to that, because it kind of felt like a sequel, and I had a little bit more of an appreciation for this movie after watching the dumpster fire that was the original, you know?
Well, yeah, 100%, yeah.
So like there was a little bit of payoff.
Even the ice casket is like similar, even.
Yes.
Yeah. I really, really loved that.
Yeah, I think, like I said previously, it just added so much to this movie. Because, like, if you're just watching this version of the thing, like, it's like, okay, cool, it's found footage there in a circle. Like, I don't really know, but, like, given the context of the previous one, it's like, that's what they did, and that's the thing, and that's, like, we know what this is happening. It's a different story. One thing I really liked, just in general, about the storytelling of it is I felt like there was a divide, because after the whole sequence sort of, like, with the dogs in the cage, and then it's like, fuck, we're fucked, like, this is really happening. There's a scene where two of the guys are in their bunk, and they're watching, like, reruns of, I think, like, The Price is Right or something.
It's,
what's the show?
Let's Make a Deal.
Let's Make a Deal.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the line is very clearly, he turns it off, and he's like, oh, I know how this one ends.
Yeah.
And then he puts on something else, and that is sort of like a cinematic device to be like, this whole portion of the movie, you think you kind of know what's happening, but the entire, like, imposter setup where it's, like, constant misdirects, constant, like, ambiguity, that's kind of when that shit starts happening. And I love that this scene is sort of like a divide, like a point of, like, oh, I know how this ends. And it's like, haha, but you don't. Like, that's I thought that was really cute. It was a really good little moment. It's a meta cute moment. Yeah.
That's interesting, because I read that because I was reading this film and I was like, you know, the absence of women, or like the only time that we see women is photos of women on the wall. Somebody's like reading a porno. The chess computer, which has a very like sexy feminine voice,
played
right?
by John Carpenter's wife at the time, Adrienne Barbeau.
Okay.
Shout
very
out.
Cool.
Shout out.
Being called a bitch for being smarter than McCready,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
And then the television, that scene, right, that you're talking about is the last time that we see a woman on screen, right?
Yeah.
Or any sort of women. And so, again, like, I had a very queer reading of this film, and I was like, oh, this is, like, so him saying, I know how this ends, and turns it off as soon as a woman, shows up, is just like, oh, I know that. I've been there. I've done that. Like, this is boring, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so this was more of like queer misogyny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I like that take a lot.
But, like, it's cool because I like what you said, too. And so, like, that's a scene. And I feel like there's a lot of scenes in this film that work on multiple levels with multiple different kinds of reads or, like, different types of analysis when it's applied to it, right?
Yeah.
Going further off of, like, the queer reading that I took from it. Because, like, I feel like the alien itself can be, like, a metaphor for AIDS and for the AIDS crisis and for gay men and all of that
because
happening.
it's something inside somebody you can't see or you
Yeah.
can't
Right.
tell what it is.
And there's
like
a blood test, right? And
Yeah.
everybody is super afraid of getting it or catching it, and they have to, like, God, there's some really, really great lines where it's like they're trying to, like, misdirect and be like, oh, well, it can't be me. Oh,
Yeah.
I've known this person forever. It can't be them. So, like, they're, like, hiding their queerness. And so, like, then, it's like, oh, well, we have to check your blood. And there's, like, this whole paranoia about that and about trying to eradicate that. And then for the people that have it, to try to hide themselves and protect themselves and, by using the misdirection of, oh, look, McCready is the person, right? Like, so doing everything they can to make sure that violence doesn't come back on them, too.
Well, to further that, even now that you're saying it, the moment of illumination of knowledge for any one of these characters where it is decided definitively that they are the monster, they literally change form into a visual monster. Like, it's like, you have it. like, like, I'm a monster now. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very, like,
totally.
I found you. You're it. It's like, which, I mean, that's kind like to even further that sort of, that idea. Yeah, that's sort of how it was. Like, if you were positive, it was, I mean, not only was it a death sentence, but it was like, you're a monster now.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot be around me. I can't associate with you, right?
Yeah.
That's not my, like, initial reading of this. I think it's because these guys were way, like, less homoerotic with one another. It was, like, clearly a much more sort of, like, tumultuous and, like, socially violent atmosphere than the first one. I think there was, like, that level of general gayness kind of flew out the window for me.
There's something interesting and aiding to the queer theory of it, of they're all trying to prove who's the real man, kind of.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
it's all about
like
dominance,
it's like who's
right?
like, I'm a real man.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
I'm
not that.
I'm not that. I'm a heterosexual man, right?
I'm not that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that, I think, like, also works towards, like, the closeting and, like, like, they literally shove Dr. Blair into a box, right? And he's one that is, he's also the one that's the loudest about this, right? He's like, this is happening. And, like, and just, it turns out that he's the big bad, right? He's like big Papa Alien. But the whole time he's trying to convince everybody else that, like, he knows what's happening, and so they don't look at him as, like, the thing, right?
Yeah.
McCready has, like, two really great lines that kind of, like, feed into this theory when you look at it through that lens, where the first one is, he's talking to everybody outside and he says, I know I'm human and some of you are human, or else you'd attack me. The thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide in intimidation. It will fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable in the open. It takes us over when it has no more enemies, nobody left to kill, then it wins. So kind of like furthering that queerness is something that we can eradicate and we can get rid of it. And then later on, when he's talking about, like, the blood test, he says every part of him, being the person that they were They had just tested the blood and the whole thing, right? Every part of him was a whole. When a man bleeds, it's just tissue. Blood from one of you won't obey when it's attacked. It will just try to survive. So talking about passing, right? Like passing as straight, or passing being able to like walk in these spaces without,
Oh, yeah. Which is the big conversation about, like, especially within queer communities, the concept of like passing privilege in that way, where it's like in a sort of heteronormative society, like the ability to pass as straight for your own safety, and that being a conversation, whereas some queer people can't. It's not something that they're capable of. Like, and also why do it in general? Also, I also, I mean, this is literally the exact same time as the early onset of the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah, totally.
It's like simultaneous.
Like, also just that idea of, it can be anybody, so like feeding into that kind of whole paranoia. Like, I know we already went through some of this with Blade Runner, and I just read this really excellent piece on Predator having like same sort of like undertones when read through a queer lens, which is just incredibly interesting to me. So maybe that's why this was at the forefront, but yeah, it's literally a blood test that they have to do to find out.
It's a literal blood test, which is wild too. It's like, give me your blood petri dish. We're testing. We're doing tests.
Also, we're going to shoot up with morphine.
Well, also, I think giving it this context too, not only the blood test, but the way that it was presented visually, where they're like literally tied to chairs in this room, and they're all awaiting this. And like, it'll do like the close up of each character as he's about to do the test, and it's like the moment before, like, this is pivotal. This is life or death. Mm-hmm. You get the positive diagnosis, you're over essentially at that time in that present context, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Given that lens, I think that's right on. That's wild.
I was definitely thinking about it because when I was watching it this time, I had just read a great piece by Tracy Moore, and it's a piece called "Everything I Know About Men I Learned from the Thing." Which is, first of all, a great title.
Wow.
We will link this. Please send this to us.
Yes,
so we can link it.
It's a great reading that I was putting it at the forefront of my mind. Because for me, this was always about the toxicity of masculinity, how all power dynamics, when you're operating in that toxic masculine society, how they fall apart so easily as soon as somebody gets the wrong idea about somebody else because it's toxic. And so she does a feminist reading, and I found myself thinking about that and agreeing a lot with what's going on there. As far as what I was mentioning earlier about there being two women in the film, she also mentions it, and I was like thinking about it. About there's a computer who's the cheating bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And bitch is also a term for a female dog.
Oh, yeah.
So the argument is that the dog is this female energy being, and the thing itself, injected into this male-dominated toxic masculine society, and it's falling apart.
That.
It's falling apart at the idea.
Shit, I love that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm screaming.
Well, it's just like you think. It's interesting because it's like this feminine energy being injected into this power dynamic, and these men that in this toxic masculine society, it's the loner that is pedestaled, right? It's the loner. It's the rebel. And these guys, like I was talking about in the last movie, those guys had to band together. These people have the idea of like the loner is the strong one, but it's like these guys have to band together to beat this thing, but they can't because of the way that their power structure works.
Well, then even if you're looking, you said literally the loner is pedestaled. Look at our lead character who's literally in a tower by himself.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And
he ends up being the alpha of the situation.
Yeah.
Also, I want to go on record and say he's super boring, and I hate that hat.
Yeah,
go on.
Yeah.
We can fight about the hat later, but yeah, go on.
And he ends up being the alpha of the situation. There's so much weird stuff, like the moment that really the like masculine, the like toxic masculine power dynamics really cements itself for me is when Windows is going to get the gun. Right,
yeah.
He's like breaking the thing. He's getting the like guns out, and then like Gary comes, and Gary's in charge. He's the highest commanding person there, and he can't get him to go. And McCready comes up. He's like, stop, and then Gary essentially like betas out to McCready, and is like, here, you can have my gun.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want this.
Yeah, like that's when the like power dynamic shifts, and now the loner's in charge, and now all hell's gonna break loose at that point.
Well, and McCready also, like, from the very first time that we see him, he's committing an act of violence against women, right? And against, like, if, the computer, right, is like, oh, you cheating bitch, and literally, like, takes his drink and throws it, like,
in the computer.
In her,
he pours it into the computer. I laughed so hard. And so, like, I know it's awful and, like, it's a shitty character, but, like, that was so fucking funny.
It was really,
so funny.
But, like, the next time that we see him, he's being super racist, where, like, he keeps getting corrected, where the scientist tries to keep saying, oh, these are Norwegian. He's like, whatever, Swedes. And he keeps doing that. He never actually acknowledges that they're Norwegian, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And, like, the whole time he's just like, I want to get drunk, whatever. And, like, really the only reason that he rises to the position that he finds himself in is because he is the most unstable and he's the most violent,
Yeah. He literally after they distrust him, the way he becomes back in charge is by threatening to kill everybody.
True.
Like, I'm going to murder all of us.
Dynamite strapped to him, right?
He's like, I'm going to murder all of us, so you better put me in charge.
I didn't understand why they shoved Blair in the room by himself for the slightest bit of that kind of behavior, and then they just kind of allow McCready to exude that and to kind of like tell them what to do throughout this. I thought that was really weird. And then there's the point where we go over to Blair and there's a fucking noose in the room, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, that part is to me the funniest part of the movie.
I was just like,
because they just open the thing and he goes like, I would like to go back inside, please. And there's a noose there. It's like so fun.
I have discussed it with me and my friends. Yeah. We have agreed that I should be able to go back inside.
Yeah.
No, that was very, because the noose is not like it's a prop in the background, and it was not there before. It's very clearly in the foreground, center frame. He made it. There's intention here. I would like to go back inside, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
I also want to bring up, like, furthering the conversation about, like, toxic masculinity as sort of the forefront or sort of the set piece for this narrative, and how he is obviously, like, the most narcissistic and the most unself-aware, because, like, our introduction to him is, again, getting him out of that computer and being like, you cheating bitch, and pouring the drink in his computer, and obviously he hates women too. But then towards the end, he's like, as far as, like, who should be in charge, he says it should be somebody a little more even-tempered. And it's like, you're literally the most childish, unhinged, uneven-tempered person, and you're saying it should be you because you're the most even-tempered. He is just so inept in every possible way. And like you said, the only reason he's in charge is because he was the one who was the most brutal and the most masculine, the most problematically masculine character because of his willingness to be an absolute chaotic pawn.
Yeah, because in this toxic society, his ability to make rash and quick decisions is valued as an asset as opposed to a detriment, like his ability to just go kill him. Like when he kills Clark, his ability to just do that is what makes him in charge in this society, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, how many people does he kill in this whole thing? Like, he's the one that kills, like, everybody, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, the paranoia of this one man and, like, the violence that, exists within him is, like, regarded as power with everybody else, and still eventually manages to get everybody killed.
Yeah.
I do want to go on record and say, I want two of these men to break my heart. Let me pull them up.
I'm so excited to hear this.
Obviously, Keith David. I need him to.
Childs, yeah, he's great.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
100.
Like, get out of my fucking face. He's so hot. It's silly. Who was the guy with the green hat? Richard, I think was his
Clark.
character name?
Clark. He's in charge of the dogs.
Yes.
Yeah.
I need both of these men to break my heart. Is what I need them to do. They're so incredibly charming and handsome and just really cute. So that would be great. Thank you so much.
He also kind of, in this hierarchy, betas out to McCready too.
Yeah.
When they go for the dogs. Because he's like, at first, very like, he's the person that takes care of the dogs. So he's very attached to them. and he like instantly just as soon as somebody asserts dominance over him, he's kind of just like lets them do whatever they have to do. Which that dog scene is really upsetting. I agree with you, by the way.
It was hard. Like, apart from all of the other, like, sort of visual raunchery as far as, like, gore is concerned, the dog stuff, I was just like, the dog biting the cage to try to get out. I was like, I'm gonna cry.
Fucked.
I will literally start crying right now. This is not nice for me. But, I mean, some of that later stuff, too, is just cool, though. Like, the sunken
Rob
stomach
Bottin,
with the teeth, like, oh my god.
Rob Bottin, who did the effects for this, was 22 years old at the time.
No shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
Damn.
Okay, I guess I'm just gonna quit doing everything forever now.
I mean, like, good for you, but also
super great. I guess I'm done being a creative person in my day-to-day life, and I should just quit.
His effects are just such a huge asset to the movie. That just take it next level.
I forgot about a lot of those. And so, like, when the stomach opened up, I, like, screamed. I was like, whoa! Because, like,
my wife did the first time, too. She that's probably the most I've ever seen her jump when we watched a movie was that.
Yeah.
It's
forgot
edited
about it.
so well, too. Just to, like, to have the effect that it does. Because it was the one time that I literally gasped and was like... and like covered my mouth like, oh my god. Like, oh, fuck. Like, that's so scary.
It's so good because in terms of the technical filmmaking, even though we have the dog scene before that, that scene is kind of the payoff for all the build-up so far. Because it just turns, because the dog scene, the grotesqueness of it unfolds slowly. Like, it's like you see all the dogs and then you see the dogs start to freak out. It comes out, the face blooms, it takes in all the other ones, they see it, it kind of slowly transforms, as opposed to that one where he defibrillates him, his hands get bitten off, he pulls him up, a thing spews out of this guy. It's just all this shit is happening at the same time, and there's just all this chaos, and it just is a total payoff for everything that's happened before this.
Yeah. It's like the chest burster scene in Alien.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
it's so emblematic of that. I had the exact same vibe. It's like you have this sort of brooding ambiguity and mystery that is like whatever the story is. You have a little bit of like chaotic violence, but not really a lot. And then it's that, again, the chest burster scene where everybody's around this one character. It's shown. We're all illuminated. We know what's happening. Fuck, we're in trouble.
There's no denying it at that point.
There's no denying it. Yeah.
That's like the point of no return, right?
Exactly,
and everybody's there to witness it, So,
and we're going to talk about that soon. I'm so excited.
and it ends with my favorite moment in film history, which is you gotta be fucking kidding, where they're staring at the spider head. And it just it's my favorite thing ever. It's just so good. And
that
which
head
they reference
was terrifying.
They reference that in It Chapter 2. There's a part where somebody's head becomes a spider, and then Bill Hader says, "You got to be fucking kidding," and it's a direct reference to that.
Cute.
How fun.
Yeah, that spider head is fucked up.
Yeah.
As soon as like the head, like the tongue tentacle is like pulling it, I'm like, stop. No, go away.
I'm waiting
get out of here.
Tattooed on my arm, just the spider head.
You're going to?
Yeah.
Oh,
hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this movie's cool. Apart from all else, I thought this movie was really cool. It was interesting. It was fun. Also, one thing that I really liked, apart from most horror movies in general, and like characters of color, the two black actors were not killed in the first whatever amount of time.
No.
Like they
almost
were
makes it till almost the end.
Yeah, exactly. Like I had noticed and appreciated that in a way that I felt was like this was a cognizant choice to it felt intentional, which I appreciated,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the notes that I have too, just because, that is like one of the biggest problematic tropes in horror. Or like any sort of like action suspense, thing is the black characters get killed first. And also like, there wasn't just one in this film, which was nice.
Yeah.
And like, I love, oh my gosh, what's his name with the roller skates? I love Knowles. So cute. Yeah. Just having him just, roll around, just being like, whatever, I got this. I was like, I love the level of joy that Knowles brings to this, to this environment.
The character dynamics just in general with all of these guys, I thought was really unique. They were all very much they're like none of them really blended together, which was nice.
You have like the QAnon guy, right, where he's like, did you like where he's saying like aliens owned South America and taught the Incas everything they know, and I was like, oh,
chariots of the gods,
cool.
man.
I mean, I'm buying it.
Palmer?
I'm here. I'm subscribing.
Oh,
chariots of
man.
the gods, man. And speaking of, with the pacing, because you have that scene that kind of is like a peak, and then it comes back down again.
Yeah.
But they really ramp up the tension again with the blood test portion of the movie.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is maybe one of the most tense scenes ever in a movie because you're just waiting.
Well, because as soon as what is his name? Like essentially test positive.
Palmer.
Was it Palmer does?
Yeah.
And then he like is like, wah! And then Windows goes over and is like trying to do whatever, and then he just clamps his head and he's like throwing his
Oh my
fucking
God.
body around. I was like, this is so chaotic.
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, because they're
the
like trying to light
absolute-
the flamethrowers and they can't light them.
The whole time he's just sitting like, you're like, get up! What are you? Stop it! Like you're supposed to be in charge, you fool! And then by that point, Windows is on the ground. He's like, oh, my flamethrower works, so I guess I have to kill him now too. And you're like, well, oh my god.
I also love that they looked terrified when when it wouldn't light, right? Like, because I feel like in so many other movies, it would have been like, fuck, oh god, fucking work, you piece of shit, or it would have been like just this unnecessary amount of attention. But like the fact that it was just them like staring there, just like go, like just like all of that inner monologue was happening, and I liked that. We didn't have to hear it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like then like that didn't take away from the moment. It wasn't like a comedic beat for that to happen. It was more of like this is what matters, and this is this person's absolutely justified, terrified reaction, right? There's no silly one-liner about like the one time that I need you to blah blah, or you know.
There's no modern convention of like, oh, let's put in a cool line here for this person.
Well, I will
let's
say,
be funny.
The one time they do try to be funny and they use the same joke like I think 2 or 3 times in a row is when he's like, I love that everything's nice and good, but will you get me the fuck out of this chair or whatever? Like,
I love that line.
They do it because he does it, but then like right before him, I think one other character is like, well, that's great that we've accomplished this, but fucking untie me. Like, they make the same joke essentially a couple times in a row, and I felt like that sort of replaying of the same joke I liked because it was like, if you're gonna throw humor in there, just I like that it's coupled in this one moment that's small and like silly and based in fear.
Those are almost comedic beats because the rest of the tests, he tests and then like jump cuts to the person next to him helping him out test, and it's like kind of funny.
Oh,
like every time it's like because they test his Nulls next, and then it goes fine, and then Nulls is like holding the flamethrower, and they test Childs, and he's like, all right, let me out, and then it hard cuts to him helping. Like, they're very comedic beats.
That whole sequence, that moment, I thought was very fun, very funny.
Yeah.
Like
that was the comedy I wanted, not the like fuck this thing won't light, right?
Not like totally.
Because like even those comedic beats didn't necessarily take away from the horror of what was happening. Yeah. So like, I love.
Yeah, it wasn't doing anything that was unnecessary. It was a very intentional like cutting of the tension. You had this incredibly tense scene, and so how are we going to get to the next sort of dramatic build? Okay, cut it with these jokes. Like the way we're framing this, cool. It's over. We're in the last act. It's about to fucking rage. Let's make sure people are back at base level so we can fuck their shit up again.
He says, "I know you gentlemen have been through a lot, but I'd like to not spend the rest of the winter tied to this fucking couch."
Yeah,
that's the line.
It was great. There's so many good moments. I think as a whole too, like even the ambiguity of the ending, right?
Yeah.
Like
because I was gonna get to that. What do you guys think of that particular part?
I love it. I'm sort of a sucker for that kind of a thing, just in general, where it's like I like movies as vignettes or moments in time where it's like time continues on and time happened previous, where it's like, I mean, obviously a happy ending or a wrapped up ending where it's like a conclusive, finite, this is what happened, this is the end of the story. But I like in this way, I am a fan of this more what would be considered realistic approach to like, like we're still fucked. I guess it's gone, but like, what are we going to do now? We're going to die out here. Maybe. Who knows? Who fucking knows? The conflict of the movie is over, but the conflict of the rest of time, or like the circumstantial conflict now. And we're obviously not going to get into it because that's a whole different movie, essentially. But I like that it essentially just cuts to black. Like, yeah, we're fucked. I really liked it.
I did too. I mean, I think that that's one of my favorite things about this film and about films that leave on like a more ambiguous note where like, you know, they have, like you said, kind of wrapped up this story, and literally there is nothing that these two characters can do at this point to change the outcome of what's going to happen. And I like that it just like sparks more conversation about what's going to happen. And like, you know, there's so many movies, not so many movies, but a lot of my favorite movies do this, or they just like give you this little nugget of like, yeah, but maybe Harrison Ford in Blade Runner was a replicant, you know, and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm here for this because to me, it feels like the storyteller is being more respectful of me in a certain way, where it's like, you know, they are, they know that I have a brain and they want me to use that. And, and I think that that's why so many times, you know, it's hard to make a sequel or a good sequel to things because they wrap up so neatly and so perfectly. And so, you know, there's no ambiguity and all of that. But like with stuff like this, I think that also just adds to the horror of this is, you know, you don't know, like, sure, maybe it is dead. Right. But also there's always going to be a question of what if, and like, even though this story is wrapped up, that doesn't mean that the bigger themes or the bigger overall narrative is wrapped up, you know, somebody's going to go there and, you know, be like, oh, what the fuck happened here? Somebody's going to find that UFO over at the Norwegian camp, right? Like, we are not done here. And so I like that it doesn't pretend like it's done here, you know?
Yeah. It does the thing where, like, obviously the setting of the movie is terrifying. Where they are, they're so isolated, not by anybody, and if anything happens, they're fucked. Like, that's sort of just the base level groundwork for the setting. It's scary. Like, that's terrifying, that place. Mm-hmm. But to then be shown the other camp and, like, seeing the horrors post-devastation of whatever happened here. Yeah. And then the ending being sort of the, oh, now that's us. Fuck.
Yeah, I liked the slow descension from, like, you know, that was such great foreshadowing for them to go to the Norwegian camp, right? And to just see this, like, incredible battle that happened here, you know, and then you're just slowly watching the U.S. encampment just slowly descend into those moments, you know, where it's like, okay, we're going to flame this. Okay, we're stuck over here now. And then they just, like, grab all of their dynamite and start, like, blowing up, literally.
Everything up.
Yeah. So I feel like setting it up with that Norwegian camp, and then, you know, was saying like, this has happened before and all of this will happen again. One of my favorite tropes in sci-fi, because the story isn't done. Who's to say?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
In within the fan community, it is obviously the most talked about part of the movie because it is the, you know, it's probably this part and then trying to determine the infection order is probably the two things that people talk about the most.
Okay. Really?
Yeah, it's this scene in particular because a lot of people try to find little clues about whether Childs is the thing or not, because that's obviously the question at the end is Childs the thing when he shows up. There's a lot of stuff that people try to point out, like you can't see his breath in the scene. You can see McCready's breath, but Dean Cunny was like, "Oh yeah, that was just a mistake. I'm sorry. Like that's not an actual clue. We just screwed that up."
I fucking hate it. I hate it when directors or like anybody involved with the movie come out and do that because like for me, one of the funnest things about loving a property or loving a film or a story so much is all of these wild theories. Like I went off after Last Jedi. Like, you know, love that Rian Johnson film, fucking great, right? Yes, I fucking went off. And then, like, you know, J.J. Abrams fucked everything else. But what I love about it is coming together with the community and, like, coming up with these really incredible, thoughtful, like, takes. And, like, you know, seeing these things that maybe people didn't, or, like, the filmmakers or the people involved with the film didn't intend. You know, and there's also toxic fandoms where, you know, it's just like, but I don't,
Star Wars.
I mean, it can be, incredibly problematic, which is really hard because because of a lot of reasons. But yeah, I love these fan theories, and I love, like, you know, coming up with, oh, and then did you see this? And did you know this? And
Totally,
like,
yeah.
and that's one of the funnest and one of my favorite parts about all of this. And that's what kept me interested in a lot of like pop culture properties and stuff like that, was that sense of community and that sense of caring too, and camaraderie, you know, like that's always the funnest part for me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't realize there was a big thing community.
Oh,
and
it exists for sure. Yeah,
I
yeah.
love
We
that
exist,
so much.
and we talk about these things. Like, one of the theories is that, okay, so speaking of the ending, he hands him a bottle of liquor, right, and he drinks it, and then McCready starts laughing. So they're covered in Molotov cocktails, and one of the theories is that he handed him one of those, and then he drinks it, and then he's like, he's an alien because he doesn't know that that's not alcohol. And so he's a thing. Like that's one of the theories being passed. Like there's a lot of stuff like that people are like looking into which for the ending, trying to figure it out is not the point. Like the point is that the trust is gone, and so we're fucked. Like as soon as that trust is gone, everybody's screwed. We can't win. Mm-hmm. So trying to figure it out is completely counterintuitive to the intention of the film. But there's a lot of stuff where it's like I said, trying to determine the infection timeline, like who gets infected when. Like stuff like when Blair touches the dead body thing with this pencil thing and then touches it to his lips. I'm like, that's when he's infected right there. Boom. Like that's when like watching it that many times and figuring that, like, whose shadow is that the dog approaches? It looks like either Palmer or Norris. Like who is it? Like because of the hair and all stuff like that. Like trying to figure out that timeline of who is with who and stuff like that. You know, like we're out there, we're doing that.
You're doing the work.
Yeah.
I fucking stand so hard.
Yeah.
And I love that, like, that even, you know, 40 years after this movie has come out, like, that these are still conversations that are being had. And I think that's the sign of, like, just actually a really incredible film, and just, like, something that works on so many different levels. Like we had like a queer reading of it, and then, you know, that article, which I really want to read, that you mentioned. Like, there's just so many different ways that this can be interpreted, and I'm here for it. I fucking live for this, you guys. This is why I started this podcast, because I want to talk about all of these things so bad.
Yeah. What a cool movie.
Yeah. I have something that I can end it with for sure. Well, first of all, I want to mention this is part of Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy.
Okay, what are the others?
It's The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness.
I've never seen any of those.
Yeah, all three of which are movies about apocalyptic events, like things that will lead to the apocalypse of planet Earth, which is it's obviously can, because it said it's like 27,000 hours if this reached civilization that humanity would be wiped, and so like they're all part of this kind of same theme. And if we're okay to end this part of the discussion, I'd like to read a quote from Roger Ebert's review of the film.
Ooh, fuck this up.
Yeah, do it.
The Thing is a great barf bag movie, all right, but is it any good? I found it disappointing for two reasons: the superficial characterizations and the plausible behavior of the scientists on the icy outposts. The Thing is basically just a geek show, a gross-out movie in which teenagers can dare one another to watch the screen. There's nothing wrong with that. I like being scared, and I was scared by many scenes in The Thing, but it seems clear that Carpenter made his choice early on to concentrate on the special effects and the technology, and to allow the story and people to become secondary, because this material has been done before and better, especially in the original The Thing and in Alien. There's no need to see this version unless you're interested in what The Thing might look while starting from anonymous greasy organs, extruding giant crab legs, and transmuting itself into dog.
What movie did he watch?
I have no idea.
That was absolutely not this movie.
I mean, the dig against Alien, like, yeah, if you want to watch a better movie, go watch Alien. Like, ooh,
yeah.
Okay,
or go watch the original. Like, oh my god, I will fight you.
And
I will
that's
fucking
just
fight you.
Such an incorrect statement.
Yeah, and that was the perception at the time of the movie coming out.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm assuming too that's just based on like, there's a level of personalized, highfalutin sort of like classist shit coming from his end, where it's like, well, like the original text or whatever. Like if you go back to the core of the work, that's what it just feels like. It's like, well, it's not as good as this. I mean, shut up.
I mean, that's just so indicative of people that wrote about cinema for so long and taught cinema for so long, right? Because it was cinema, right? It was, this
cinema.
big, giant, grand, capital C cinema thing. Whereas I love that we're getting away from that with, having things like Netflix and having like streaming and things like that. And I love that those old filmmakers are so pissed about it because because to me too, it's just like you were shitting on things like The Thing, right? Or 2001 Space Odyssey. And these are fucking incredible films. Yeah. What have you done? You tried to come back and do The Witches? Please.
It's capital C cinema versus Alien Ant Farm, the movies.
Yeah. We're living in a world now where this movie that he lauded so much, the original one, I would rather have a copy of Robo War in my house than that fucking movie. That's the world we're living in.
I want to watch Robo War. It's
great. It's great.
It's good bad.
Yeah, and what I was going to say too is I'm thankful for, and I think he is too thankful for the failure of this movie because it led to, his career would have gone to a different place for sure if this had been a big hit. Mm-hmm. This was his biggest budgeted movie at the time. At the time, he was really distraught about it because it lost a ton of money. But then we wouldn't have gotten Christine, we wouldn't have gotten Starman, we wouldn't have gotten Big Trouble, Little China, probably if this movie had succeeded. So we could be thankful for that.
So there's a level of like just instilling his cult legacy with the failure of this movie.
Completely.
The world just wasn't ready for him at the time.
Yes. There's a meme that's constantly shared in the Thing Facebook groups, and it is Marty McFly when he's playing the guitar, and it says, "This is about the Thing," and he says, "Oh, I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet, but your kids are gonna love it."
We're back
from Antarctica and the North Pole. Simultaneously.
Yeah. Okay, wait. Jake.
Yes.
Can you say that thing that you told us in the break? Because I wanted to.
So what I was saying, that, and it lends to the queer reading of the movie, is that the 82 thing.
82.
That the original tagline for the film was, "Man is the warmest place to hide."
Which, I mean, we can say
which was written by the same guy that wrote "In Space, No One Can Hear You Scream."
Ooh.
Oh my gosh.
Same tagline writer.
Okay. Well, hold on. No, sorry. We have to
Wait,
look it
I'm
up.
sorry. Tagline writer is a profession, and
apparently, yeah.
Where do I sign up for this?
I don't know.
What is this person's name?
Let me look up the Thing 1982 page because it was on there. I've never read this. After one market research screening, Carpenter queried the audience on their thoughts, and one audience member asked, "Well, what happened at the very end? Which one was the Thing?" When Carpenter responded that it was up to their imagination, the audience member responded, "Oh, God, I hate that."
That's fucking fantastic. Oh, my God. Oh,
right here.
Boring.
Stephen Frankfurt. That's who wrote it.
Stephen Frankfurt?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking it up. Oh, wait. You know what? I'm really not finding anything. I'll look it up later. But, I mean, I wonder, because, like, also another iconic sort of, like, queer film, Alien, like, for that. And then also just, I mean, man is the warmest place to hide. Hey, come on. Hey, now.
Yeah.
Now, this is what
we get what you're saying.
dreams are made of. Yeah, we get it. Like, I hear you, and I agree. Overall, like, at the end of the day, I agree.
I feel like he just wanted to make it overt that, hey, this is the read that you should be. This is the lens you need when you're watching this.
Yes, you need to know going into this.
Yeah.
How fun! I love that.
Okay, Eric.
Yes.
The 1950s, The Thing from Another World. Who was this movie for? Big old yawn.
I'm yawning.
Was it because it was a snoozer?
It was for alarm clocks, because they are big old snooze button. It was a big old snooze button. That was really not a good joke. I'm so sorry about that. No, I mean, I think it was for movie theaters to buy time.
Fill time.
Fill time. It was a filler. It's a filler queen for sure. Like, that's all it was.
It's like a filler episode before, like, television.
Yeah, it was such a filler. It was all filler. Unlike Sum 41's pinnacle album, it was all filler, no killer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Just nothing good came out of that.
Jake, who do you think this was for?
Roger Ebert and other people who are dead.
Yes. Yeah.
That's who. That's
For
who would enjoy this.
Cineboomers?
Yes.
I think
Cineboomers.
I feel like
dead.
that's relatively inarguable. Yeah, I think you're correct completely.
Yeah, this was for that dude that wanted his friend to be in the
The Directors Guild.
Yeah.
For Howard
Yeah.
Hawks, for Chris Nibby or whatever.
He's like,
You know
oh,
what?
this is a shit movie that I don't want to like put my
Direct,
name on
yeah.
directing, but like it was probably like his like secret obsession. He always wanted to make this movie, but like he couldn't put his name on it. So it was like a no-brainer to like, oh, my friend wants this. I want him to have this, and he could take credit for it, and it won't tarnish my name. Perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing. Robert Zemeckis, get in here. No, fantastic. I love.
Eric, did you like it?
No, the first one's bad. The first one is a snoozer. It's a big snooze fest. There are elements that I like. I loved, again, the brooding homoeroticism. Big fan. Love it. I love the will they or won't they. I mean, honestly, foreplay is arguably the best part. So for me, I'm like, oh, if this was all foreplay for these guys, great. I love. Monster was boring. Story was boring. Dialogue was boring. I didn't like it. No. Gorge.
Jake.
It's a hard pass for me.
Yeah.
And that's on the R rating scale, which is pass, stream, rent, and buy, and there's hard and soft in each one. And this is a hard pass for sure.
Hard pass.
Don't even waste your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100% for me too. It was a big old snooze fest. If this was a 10-minute short film, maybe that would have made it better and more interesting, because I struggled to get through this one. Everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Struggled.
Just YouTube the scene of the guy on fire.
Yeah, that's really all you need. There's nothing interesting about this movie. What about the 1982 version, Eric? Was this new, interesting, or the same? Progressive, regressive? How has the story evolved with today's ideals?
I think it was like the general positive in every capacity. I think it was progressive just in by way of storytelling in general. I mean, it was a much better constructed narrative and story. Character development was by far. I mean, the first one had none, whereas this one had any, and it was great. So progressive generally, I think today's ideals is hard to like qualify only for the fact that it came out in 82, which was like 10 years before my birth. But I think in general, given everything we discussed, I'd say it's pretty progressive in its ideals, I guess. Yeah. Wait, what am I saying? Yes. Positive, good, thumbs up all around.
How about you, Jake?
Yeah, I agree. I think it has, unlike the previous version, it has something to say about something. Mm-hmm. I think that it's not even close to as superficial as the previous version. In fact, I don't think it's superficial in any way. I think it's got a lot going on for it in terms of its intentions, and even just from a technical filmmaking standpoint, I just think it's like so much more progressive compared to the other. Mm-hmm. But I'm biased. It's my favorite movie of all time.
I mean, it's okay. We stand too.
Yeah.
So we fight on this podcast about movies that we stand for no reason, even though they're bad movies.
Totally.
Which this is not.
Yeah. Sometimes even if it's garbage, I'm like, is it hot, problematic trash? Yeah. Will I watch
but
it?
But it's a
more
heist
times?
movie, and
Absolutely.
I love heist movies.
It's a heist movie,
totally.
and I'm here for it. Yeah.
I think in every way, this film is new and interesting. I think the elements that were the same were all just really background, like in terms of like watching the first one gave me more appreciation and more context for what happened at the Norwegian camp and stuff like that. So that kind of felt like a little Easter egg for me. But I think that it's hard not to be new and interesting when the first one is just, even at the time, I'm sure it felt old, and it felt just dated in its storytelling and in its flat characters and in its just in the way that it just exists to fill time. So it's anything that this film did would have been more interesting than that. I do think that it was more progressive in terms of like looking at the queer subtext. I don't I'm not sure if like any of that was overt or like with the queer and the feminist subtext that we talked about, but I'm sure that some of it had to be intentional. I feel like there was too much there for even just like a little bit, just like that tagline, like you were saying, Jake, like,
oh yeah,
just at the very least, even if nobody else caught on, like it was for that person that wrote that tagline, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like there was just these little moments of nuance that even if it was just one person's decision and nobody else caught on, like there was intent behind a lot of that. Yeah. As far as evolving with today's ideals, I like that looking at it as a critical viewer. I'm looking at it and back when I first watched it, it's like, oh yeah, Mick Reddy's the dude. He's got it, But looking at it now in the year 2021, I'm like, man, he sucks. And he's the worst one. And he's so problematic. And he's like, and I like that the film doesn't really reward him for any of his behavior, like when you look at it, he's the one that actually kills everybody. And Childs is like, says like, look, you killed that guy and he wasn't, you're a fucking murderer, Yeah. And more to what Jake was saying about the portrayal of toxic masculinity in this space, like really just showing that at the end of the day, all that creates is more violence. And what that does is just, destroy society as a whole, know? Yeah. So looking at it that way is just really great for me personally. And I got a lot more out of it than I expected.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But I think that it's evolved with today's ideals in a really interesting, nuanced way, because I think if somebody tried, I guess they did try to remake the Thing already, but I doubt that it would be as incredibly nuanced as this film is in its terms of its characterization and what it's saying.
Hell yeah.
Eric, who is this movie for?
I don't know. I was gonna make a joke and be like, it's for the idea of gay panic. Just in general, the ethereal notion of like say a lavender scare or a queer panic or like gay panic, what have you. That's who I think it was for. It was for that idea. Yeah, I don't know.
What about you, Jake?
It's kind of a boring answer, but I think it's for just about anybody because, like, as you were saying, there's so much you can take away from this, as far as reading, as far as if you want to go deeper. But I think also if you just want to have a box of popcorn and watch this, it's also enjoyable on that level too. Like it's enjoyable as just a film, but it's also enjoyable if you want to, take it to the next level and actually look at what it's trying to say.
I definitely agree. I think that it was for Cineboomers. I think
Cineboomers.
I think that it was to try to rile them up. And, I'm kind of obsessed with that review that you read, Jake.
It's pretty crazy, yeah.
I kind of want that to be a segment now on each episode. I want to read a prominent review from somebody of the time.
An Ebert review every time.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's so good. Just incredible.
What does Siskel think?
Eric, did you like it?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was great. I think it's a fantastic movie. I was so entertained. I thought it was fun. I thought it was scary. I thought it was engaging. Again, even like as Jake was saying, even from a completely like surface textual level, it's an enjoyable movie, even if you're not looking at sort of like the social commentary or some of the more subtextual stuff like we just did. But even with that, it's even a more interesting movie. I think it's fantastic. Yeah, I get why this is your favorite movie, Jake.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna ask you, Jake. Did you like it?
Yeah, it's my favorite movie of all time. I like to consider myself a horror, cult, and exploitation aficionado. And out of all the movies I've seen, this is in every level for me. Technically, the acting, the score, everything just fires on all cylinders and creates what, for me, is a perfect movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this movie. I love, like you guys were saying, that you could just like sit there and critique the shit out of it and 40 years later still be having these conversations about like theories about the film and like just getting really into that. And I also love that you could also just put it on and just it could be on and you can just have a great Sunday afternoon, because I watch scary movies during the day because I'm a little baby. I did have to watch a couple episodes of Sailor Moon after this. I want you guys to know, needed a palate cleanser before bed. Because I'm a big old baby when it comes to scary movies. But I love that you don't have to come into this with any sort of like reading. You don't have to come into it wanting to get something out of it. You don't have to come into it like being smart or being educated. This can just be like enjoyed no matter who you are on any level. And the accessibility of that is one of the things that I love.
Yeah. Before we like officially end, I just want to come back to that tagline because I keep thinking about it. Yeah. And I'm like, why did he use the term warm? Like that is the most inarguable.
It is strange.
gay portion of that. Like you could have put safest. You could have said man is the safest place to hide. Like still gives the same vibe, but you said warmest. Hey now. Warm. In this context, warmest is so fucking loaded.
Yeah.
It's a fully loaded nacho. You know what I mean? It's just thick with gay text. Gext, if you will.
Yeah.
Gext, yeah. Sorry. I just said I literally can't stop thinking about it. I think it's wild, and what a choice to use the term warm. In that context.
Truly.
My God.
I think that's it for us.
We did it.
Look at us.
We're here.
Thank you so much, Jake, for joining us. This was so delightful.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Jake. Thank you.
I think as soon as you guys started this podcast, I messaged Eric and I was like, we need to talk about the thing.
Yes.
Is there anything that you want to plug, Jake?
Yeah, I'll just go through everything. Lightweight, that band Lightweight. Lousy Advice, the band. Lousy Advice, the podcast.
Ooh.
The Dead of Night podcast launching next week or this week. And also, I was going to mention, follow me on Letterboxd at Diggum. Letterboxd is the best social media, and everybody should have one. And I'm Diggum on there.
Okay, I see you post about this all the time on Instagram. I see like, this is my rating. What is Letterboxd?
It's basically just a social media where you follow each other and rate movies, and that's it. You just see other people's movie ratings and reviews, and that's literally it.
So then I can like theoretically find my movie best friend on there and be like, oh, this is
and then at the end of the year, it gives you how many movies you watched, what you ranked, everything, all that stuff like that. The director you watched the most, it gives you all these like stats and stuff. It's a fun way to track your watching.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
Is that just for film, or does that also include television?
There's television on there because I like rated WandaVision and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and all of the places. It really helps us with visibility. And yeah, we also have a Patreon, so you can become a patron of our show. We just dropped a hot episode about Sailor Moon and the Da Vinci Code and LA Cop Gangs. We were all over the place in that episode. So visit our Patreon. The link is in the show notes. And you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all of the places, because we love you. Artwork was by Eric Lefebvre, editing by Danny Barkley. And thank you, Eric and Jake.
Thank you, Jess and Jake.
Thank you, Jess and Eric.
And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical.
Bye.
Bye, 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 bye. This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit thenotStalgiaNetwork.com for more.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric.
I'm Shelby.
I'm Jake.
And we are the band Lousy Advice from the Lousy Advice Podcast.
Come listen as we draft artist and genre-centric best of lists.
With the help of our closest friends.
These lists are canon.
And there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it.
From Misfits to Cher.
Green Day to Gaga.
Or Pup to Paramore.
Listen to the Lousy Advice Podcast now, or else.
Stream us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the NOTstalgia Network, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget that we are the band Lousy Advice, and this is our podcast, the Lousy Advice Podcast.
The Lousy Advice Podcast?
The Lousy Advice Podcast. Podcast.